Hello and welcome to the Ruth MacFit podcast. I am your host, Ruth, founder of Ruth MacFit, where we're all about making changes that work with your life and not against it. You see, around here, it's all about sustainable change and feeling strong, confident, and amazing in midlife and beyond. So go and grab a cuppa and join me in my virtual living room for chats about midlife, health and fitness, mindset, and everything in between. Let's make midlife the best chapter yet. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Very happy to have you here. Very happy to be here as always. Now, this is an episode I've wanted to record for a little while. It was actually requested by a member of our community, and I'm finally doing it. Now, I know a lot of my podcasts tend to be around mindset, how to stay consistent, how to calm the chaos, how to shift thinking around food and movement. But today, we're actually going to chat about something a little more practical, but still just as important. And that is what maintenance actually looks like once you've hit your fat loss goal, and then how to make it sustainable. Because if you've ever found yourself saying, I just cannot wait for this diet to finish so I can go back to normal, then this is definitely the episode for you. And I do know that I used to do this years ago. I used to be like, I just need to manage this for 8, 12 weeks or whatever it was, and then I can go back to normal. But the thing is, if we're saying this, if we can't wait for the diet to end so we can go back to normal, then we probably haven't created a new normal that is really maintainable. And that's where a lot of people fall into this yo-yo dieting trap. You know, we push through a strict plan, maybe cut calories really low, turn down social events, try and exercise every day, even when we're exhausted. And yes, you'd probably lose weight, but because it's not built around reality, real life, and what we want life to be like, then the second you stop, that weight will then just come creeping back on. And this has actually got a name. It's called the restrict then rebound cycle. And it's very, very common. In fact, the research shows that those who lose weight through strict dieting tend to regain it again within 1 to 5 years. And there's a study that I really wanted to share with you. And that was by Wing and Phelan. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it was back in 2005, and it found that people who successfully maintain weight loss over the long term have something in common, and that is that they keep up the habits that help them to lose the weight in the first place. And those habits are things like physical activity, self-reflection or self-monitoring, planning ahead, and creating structure around food. And this is why I put such a big emphasis on this in my coaching in the Ruth MacFit community. Because often I'll see that new clients will come in, they've done all the diets, they've followed all the rules, and they feel fed up, burnt out with dieting. So one of the first things that we want to do is zoom out and help them build habits they can actually imagine doing for life. Things that make it feel easier and not harder, and things that they can keep going with for longer than the length of a program. That is where the magic is going to happen. So let's be clear here. Maintenance shouldn't feel like a finish line. It should just feel like a continuation with a bit more flexibility. How do we know when we've actually reached maintenance? It's such a good question, and one I get asked often. I think often when we're going through this weight loss journey, we're conditioned to think that we should keep losing weight until we hit some perfect number on the scale or until we look a certain way. But maintenance isn't a number. It's the place you arrive at when the lifestyle that you're living feels aligned with how you want to feel and live. And I think you know when you've reached maintenance, when you're feeling good in your body, you're living in a way that feels sustainable, energy, and your mood is feeling more stable. You're eating in a way that feels more enjoyable, not overly restrictive, and you wouldn't want to give up anything else just to lose a little bit more weight. I do want you to remember though, that at this point, you might still see some body fat. You might still have a little cellulite. You might look in the mirror and go, I could probably lose a little bit more. And the real question to ask yourself here is at what cost? Like, are you happy to give up what it would take to lose just a little bit more? I've worked with so many women in the past who are already at the lower end of a healthy weight range, but because they can still see that softness or fat on their body, they assume that they haven't finished and that they should just keep on going with their diet. And this is just very much a context because I know that BMI is not perfect. I'm sure you know that. It doesn't take into consideration muscle mass and so on. But it's good to use as a general ballpark. And a healthy BMI is classed as between 18.5 to 24.9 for women. And I've spoken to many women over the years who've been sitting comfortably within or even at the lower end of that range, but they still feel the pressure to diet because they don't look at themselves and think that they look lean enough. And what these women are often actually talking about is a body composition goal, not a weight loss goal. And it's totally different. At this stage, you're thinking more about toning up or building definition. And that's going to be more strength training and building lean muscle, not cutting calories. Now, the American Council on Exercise give a healthy body fat range of between 21 to 33% for women. Now, if you're measuring body fat, I'd be very cautious about doing this because the ones that you get at home or in the gym and so on are highly unreliable. The amount of water we've got in our system tends to set them off so they can fluctuate wildly. But in this context, I do want to share that because even within that range, that healthy fat range, it is going to be completely normal to have some visible softness, especially around the hips and thighs. And that's largely down to things like hormones, estrogen, and genetics. But it doesn't mean that you're not lean or that you're not healthy. And it's also important to remember that if our calories are too low, especially when you're already lean, it can actually make it harder to change your body composition. You need fuel to build muscle, to train well, and to recover properly. Undereating can also lead to poor energy, disrupted sleep, weaker training sessions, and so much more. So chasing smaller numbers at all costs can end up making you feel pretty rubbish. You can feel worse and then slow the progress that you're actually aiming for. And this is one of the biggest mindset shifts that I help women work through in coaching. It's that understanding that the goal isn't about constantly shrinking or getting smaller or reaching some weight that they've just picked. It's about being able to say, I like how I live, I feel good in my body, and I wouldn't trade this for a slightly smaller jean size. And that is a powerful shift. It doesn't mean that you can't have a fat loss goal. It just means that you'll know when you're done. Sometimes women will come to me with a set weight target and they stop before they get there, not because they've given up, I want to be clear on that, but because they're happy. They've created this lifestyle that feels good. They enjoy what they're doing and they don't want to restrict any further. They're more confident. They feel great. And this is also a great sign that you've hit maintenance. This is where value-based living comes in. It's about asking yourself, is the way that I'm living aligned with what really matters to me, rather than chasing arbitrary numbers or outdated ideals. And it is hard to explain, but honestly, you really do know when you're there. It's not the scale that tells you either. It's definitely how you feel. Maintenance done well doesn't look drastically different to what you've already been doing when your goal has been fat loss. You're still moving your body regularly. You're still planning ahead, be that with meals or thinking about what your day is going to look like. You're still eating in a way that supports your energy and your mood. You're still prioritizing protein and fiber-rich foods, fruit, veg, etc. And yes, you are still going to be mindful about what you're eating. The main difference is that you're going to have more calories to play with. And that often looks like a little more on some days and a little less on others. It's not going to be tracking every gram, but instead listening to your body and aiming for that consistency overall. I think we can get into this thinking where I need to reach these maintenance calories every day. But in reality, some days are going to be a little bit more and some days are going to be a little bit less. But we're looking to be able to sustain this. And that's why I find it so important to not just help women get the results, but also teach them how to keep them. I don't want you just to be here for 8 weeks and think, how much weight can I lose in 8 weeks? I want to be helping you build a lifestyle that has you feeling good and works with your life, not against it. You might have heard me saying before, because I say it all the time, but fat loss really can become so easy that you don't know you're doing it anymore. And that's because it's not going to feel that much different to when you get to maintenance. Maintenance is just the next phase of the process. There's this idea, I think, that when you finish a diet, you can just go back to eating whatever you want and it's going to be fine. But our bodies don't work like that. And it's worth remembering that you don't need to be earning your food in any way. You don't need to restrict how much joy you have. You just need to find a balance and stick with it. It's why I absolutely love the no crap cake condition, because it's more about saying no to those bang average things so that you can have more room and flexibility to say yes to the things that have you feeling really good. Think less often, more enjoyable. And in maintenance with nutrition, it's likely only going to be adding on around 200 to 300 calories a day to begin with. And that's assuming that you're still losing weight up to that point. Some people do just get to the point when they're not losing weight anymore and they've just found their natural maintenance. But assuming that you are still losing weight, then you could just start by adding 200 to 300 calories. And that might look like a bigger portion of oats at breakfast, a handful of nuts or seeds as a snack, an extra slice of sourdough or some avocado with the eggs that you've been having, or some olive oil on the roasted veg. Now, I've mentioned those foods for a reason, and that's because some of those foods are more calorie dense, but they're all packed with plenty of nutrients that our body's going to need. So rather than just reintroducing loads of ultra processed, high fat, high sugar foods in large amounts, instead think about increasing the calories through those quality foods that are going to support your energy and recovery. Obviously, we're not going to be perfect. You're going to have other things as well. But it is something that the National Weight Registry has found repeatedly, and it's people who successfully keep weight off long term tend to eat breakfast, continue to monitor food intake to some extent, and maintain consistent patterns of eating. They don't just stop because they've built habits that are simple, satisfying, and that they can sustain. Now, when we talk about monitoring food intake, I was actually chatting to a friend about this recently, and she asked if I tracked calories, and I was like, no, I don't track calories. But then I thought about it a bit more, and I was like, actually, I do in a way, maybe not in a formal tracking app kind of way, but I'm very aware of the rough calorie content in my meals, and that awareness makes a big difference. This is where eating 3 structured meals a day really helps with maintenance. If you've been doing that during fat loss, like eating regular meals that are balanced and satisfying, then you already have a pretty good sense of what your intake looks like. It's not rigid, but it's intentional, right? For example, if I'm trying a new recipe, I might quickly check the calories, not because I want to be super precise, but because I want to know roughly what's in it. I don't track it in the app, but I am mentally clocking what I'm eating. And because I've got that awareness, I also have a good feel for when I'm adding in those snacks or extras and whether those are in line with what I need that day. So it's not going to be about obsessing or logging every single crumb. It's knowing yourself, knowing your food, and staying connected with what is going to work for you and your body. Now, another thing that can happen is people can stop exercising after they've lost their weight because they were purely using it as a way to burn calories, to earn that food. And movement should absolutely be part of life, especially as we age. It's not a punishment. No one's making you do it. It's something that's going to support your mood, your strength, your bones, your brain, your long-term health. And it's going to help us also maintain the results that we've got. And maintenance is a mindset too. It's less, what do I have to do? And more, it feels good to do this. When you notice how good it makes you feel, it is much harder to give up on. Most of the women I work with are here not just to achieve those short-term goals, but they want to do it in a way that has them feeling great now, but also for future them, so that they can keep having adventures for as long as possible. And the whole thing, about use it or lose it is so true when it comes to movement. If you stop moving, it becomes harder and harder to do. So here are your takeaways for today that I really want you to remember. If you're building habits and you're thinking, I just can't imagine keeping these up, then it's definitely time to reassess. Remember that maintenance isn't a big shift. It's the same sustainable habits that you've been doing in fat loss with a little more flexibility. You're not done when you reach your goal, whatever your goal might be. You're just getting started with living in a way that supports you feeling healthy, happy, and great now and in the future. And remember, it is okay to feel like you're done before you've hit that number, that's weight on the scales that you might have specified at the beginning. If the life you're living feels aligned, then that will also count as success. And if this episode has resonated with you and you're thinking, this is exactly the kind of support that I've been missing, then this is what I help women with every day inside the Ruth MacFit community. Like whether you're in the thick of it with fat loss or wondering what comes next, we're always going to take mindset first. It's going to be a realistic approach that helps you feel better in your body and in life. In our 20s, we might have got a way of thinking, I just need to move more and eat less. But midlife's not like that. We've got so many other things going on. So we don't want extremes or guilt. We just want support, structure, and long-term change that has us feeling great, not just in midlife, but beyond. So with that in mind, if you have any questions for me, you can find me on Instagram at Ruth MacFit. I would also love it if you could subscribe to this podcast, share, comment, let me know how you got on. And of course, you can head to my website, www.ruthmacfit.com, for more information on coaching options. Until next time, remember to keep doing the things that are making you feel good, strong, and capable in midlife. Until then, goodbye.